Next step in making the Cassegrain support spider needs a mandrel. Better make one then. The Delrin spider has an internal M12 by 0.5mm thread and a 13mm counter bore. I'm choosing brass because this piece of 30mm bar already has a suitable spigot turned on one end. It's actually oversized, so won't fit in my 30mm ER40 collet, so I'll have to use the Pratt Bernard 3-jaw that I reground last year. I'm using a CCGT positive rate polished carbide insert with a 0.4mm corner radius. I had a special offer from Cutwell last year and bought piles of YG1 inserts at a decent price. For me, it was probably about 5 years' supply. Don't tell Cutwell. I've hit the dimension, so now I need to cut a 2mm groove to remove the corner radius caused by the insert. It only needs 0.5mm or so. It's a small burr, so I'll remove it with a smooth cut file, very carefully. I'm not going to part this up in the lathe, and I don't need the 8-inch Pratt any longer, so I'll whip the brass out and snip off a suitable length with the horrible bandsaw, then swap the 3-jaw for my ER40 collet chuck. This old Colchester has a D14 3-pin cam lock and taper fitting on the spindle nose, so it means I can slam the thing into reverse and take heavy cuts without any risk of the chuck unwinding itself and expending its considerable angular momentum by demolishing walls, dogs, cars, and last but not least, innocent machinists. It's really important to look after that spindle nose and make absolutely sure there are no dings or chips or other defects in the mating face or on the taper of the chuck mount, so they get a really good clean every time I swap a chuck out. I always lay a bit of clean plywood across the bedways in case I drop a chuck or tool and cause what are euphemistically known as witness marks, but they're actually clumsy buffoon marks. I lay the board with the same side up every time to prevent contamination. Don't know whether that's a real risk or not. I've left about 35mm of stock on the workpiece. The 19mm shank fits nicely in the ER40 collet with no risk of binding on a fillet from machining because of things like foresight and experience, which gave me an education about relief grooves. It's quite possible to form decent non-flying chips with this brass if you get the feeds and speeds right, but I'm hogging material off and the floor's already covered with sharp shards of brass, so another layer won't hurt. I'm a failure at being a tidy machinist. I'm taking this down to a whisker over 13mm so it fits snugly in the counter bore. Then I'll take the first 11mm of the spigot down to exactly 12mm, ready for single point threading in the usual Joe Pye inverted tool technique. That's a 12mm section machined to size, so now I need a groove for the end of the threaded section, just a fraction deeper than the depth of the thread. This big threading insert makes a brilliant chamfer tool. Despite it being a bit pointless, I still like to use die chem when I'm doing external threads. Look, I know the smart kids use Sharpies these days, but these pots of stinky red and blue jollop are going to be around for a long time, and I'm not modern. Very. I need to touch off extremely carefully so I can get the thread depth spot on. I usually take about 5 passes for 0.5mm threads in brass, and I use oil lube despite being told it's a bad idea. It works for me. DROs are marvellous. Even 1980s DROs with TTL chips and LED 7-segment displays are fine. This thread's a bit delicate for the violence of wire brushes, so I'll just use Gariflex to polish the threads and a smooth file to clean up the corners. Then it'll be time for a test fit of the part completed Delrin spider blanks. Those drops of oil on the camera lens are going to be around for a long time, sorry. I'm a bad cinematographer too. The mandrel needs an M6 tapped hole for a retaining bolt. Let's guess how squeaky the spiral tap will be in this brass. That looks remarkably like the CAD drawing I didn't create for this part. It was sort of virtual in my head. Last part for this mandrel assembly is the counterboard pressure plate to fit under the screw head and spread the screw pressure over the face of the Delrin. I found this very short bit of rod in the scrap bin. It's way too short really, but I'm going for it anyway. Anyone want to lay bets as to when this horrible Sony ZV-1 decides it's out of battery and just shuts down without warning in the middle of a shot I can't re-record? What sort of engineer designs a thing that doesn't issue a decent warning about the battery being seconds from death? Probably the same one that did the ergonomics of the manual focus wheel. It's probably modern. I've only been using cameras for 60 years, so what do I know? Yep, that's when it died. I'm using a cheap counterbore in a 6.2mm hole that you didn't see me drill. Taking my life in my hands, or at least taking my fingers in my... time to abandon this sentence, methinks, Neil. I'm using a 3-cornered scraper to deburr the counterbore. That's better. The mandrel's ready for use on the mill now, so I'll do a quick check to make sure I've left enough clearance. Certainly fine for milling the ears on the rotary table, and as tight as I expected to fit a 4-inch slitting saw in there, so I think I'll use a 2-inch by 16th inch slitting saw blade in my homemade mandrel for that job. This little fixture was a fun exercise, and it's a good reminder of just how much work often goes into fixtures to make it possible to do repeatable precision work. This mandrel probably took 5 times as long to make as the time it will take to machine 24 of the Delrin spiders. But it's not about the time saving, it's the fact that without the fixture, making the part wouldn't be practical at all.